welcome you to the December 3rd, 2019 meeting of the Whitehall City Council for the purpose of considering such matters that may come before it. I'm going to ask everyone to please rise for a moment of silence and remain standing for the pledge. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison.
Present.
Bailey.
Present.
Rodriguez.
Present.
Elmore.
Present.
Coniston.
Present.
Cantor.
Present.
Peck.
Present.
President Graham.
Present. Well, next up we have our approval of minutes for November 19, 2019 agenda and regular meeting.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the November 19th minutes.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Coniston and a second by Mr. Cantor for approval of the November 19, 2019 minutes. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
The minutes have been approved. It's time for our first opportunity for poll public. If anyone would like to come forward, you'll have up to 3 minutes. Seeing no one, we will move to our standing committee reports. And we will begin with Administration and Financial Management, Chairperson Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Administration and Financial Management did meet last Tuesday. We just discussed a number of items, and quite a few of them will be introduced tonight for your consideration. We will be meeting again next Tuesday, sometime after 6:30.
All righty, thank you, sir. Next up, we have Community and Elder Advocacy, Chairperson Elmore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Community Elder Advocacy did meet on Tuesday. No pending legislation or drafts. We'll meet again. The minutes are on file. We'll meet again next Tuesday in the back at 6:30.
All right, thank you. Community Standards and Enforcement, Chairperson Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Community Standards and Enforcement met last Tuesday. Minutes are on file. We'll meet again next Tuesday, sometime after 6:30.
Thank you, sir. Economic Development, Chairperson Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Economic Development also met last Tuesday in my absence. The minutes are on file, and we'll meet again next week, sometime after 6:30 in the back.
All right, thank you, sir. Infrastructure, Maintenance, and Services, Chairperson Hack.
Thank you, Mr. President. Infrastructure, Maintenance, and Services met last Tuesday. The minutes are on file. We have one piece of legislation, Ordinance 154, 2019, and we will meet next Tuesday, sometime 6:30 in the back.
All right, thank you. And finally, we have Parks and Recreation, Chairperson Cantor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Parks and Recreation also met last week. Our minutes are on file. We have no drafts or legislations tonight. This thing's really echoing back. But we did have the grand opening of the Ymca. I hope a lot of people were able to attend this past weekend. We'll meet again in the back next week sometime after 6:30.
All right, thank you, sir. And we don't want to forget Public Safety, Chairperson Coniston.
No, I was a little sad there. Thank you, Mr. President. Public Safety met last week. Our minutes are on file, and we'll meet again in the back sometime after 6:30 on Tuesday.
All right, just making sure everybody's on their toes this evening.
Yes, absolutely.
That concludes our standing committee reports, and we'll move on to our officials' reports, and we'll begin with our mayor, Ms. Kim Maggard.
Good evening. I'd just like to remind everyone about the Winter Wonderland here at City Hall. This is this coming Friday, December 6th from 6 to 8 p.m. It's a great family event, and Santa Claus will be making his appearance at 6 o'clock. So that's going to be very exciting. So try to be here a little bit before 6 if you want to see Santa. But in the meantime, after Santa leaves and goes back to the North Pole, because he's very, very busy this time of year, we will be having crafts in a tent that will be heated. So if it's really cold, just know that your little ones and you can keep warm in the tent as you're making your crafts. We'll also have a movie going on in here, Elf, and you may even see some elf characters that's here. So I would just think it's going to be a lot of fun. Elf is my very favorite Christmas movie. I mean, I love it. So I may even be singing. We'll see, because you know what happens when you sing. Magic happens, except for me. Anyway, I'll stop now. But really, you need to come because it's just a lot of fun. Also, Wes had mentioned about the YMCA. We had a wonderful grand opening on the 22nd. And I'll tell you, every time I go there, I see people who are at the desk getting information and about signing up. And I think that that's going very well. But it's just a wonderful facility. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it, you need to go over and look at it. It's phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our city attorney, Mr. Michael Bivens.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening. The city attorney's office in the month of November prosecuted 223 cases in mayor's court. 25 of those were Whitehall residents, so that's 11%, which is where we were this time last year. That being said, secondarily, want to announce, and many of you know in the public and many of you know on council, that the City of Whitehall City Attorney's Office started the first of its kind diversion program back in 2016, where all we did was close the gaps between an individual that's going into diversion by having a specialist that's culturally competent in the courtroom that can meet a person in real time, taking away all of the excuses for completing a program. Since 2016, we've successfully diverted at least close to 700 cases since 2016. I'm proud to announce, as I sit here today, we have 0% recidivism out of all of those individuals that were there. But something just occurred last week, which is just phenomenal. Taking the model of organic outreach, one of our diversion specialists asked if we could bring an employer into the mayor's court. And that employer has agreed to come in, and they started coming in last week. The way that we're targeting this case, and if you know, the Ohio legislature initiated a House Bill 336, which was called the Ohio Amnesty Program, and it was targeting individuals with driving under suspension, and those individuals had to be SNAP eligible, so they had to be indigent. That's a quick way of saying they had to be indigent. Well, that program ended in July, and it did so well that they reinitiated it in October to last from October through December 31st. But still, that doesn't help individuals that may be unemployed, not on SNAP benefits, not indigent, or either underemployed. So what we're doing is we're targeting, and we're calling it the Whitehall Amnesty Initiative, where the individuals that have driving under suspension cases will screen here, they will get employment here, they will get job placement here. The only obligation once they get placed into a job is they would pay their costs and fines to mayor's court, but their case with Whitehall will be done. Since we've started last week, 7 people have found employment in our Whitehall mayor's court.
Wow.
So that's amazing. And so that being said, that's happening right now in real time. I'm really excited about it. It's a part of what's happening right now with the Franklin County Poverty Initiative. It comports with that. So there are a lot of great possibilities coming out of that. So more to come in the weeks coming. Next, from the City Attorney's Office. The City Attorney's Office has made a commitment to Whitehall Yearling High School to commit to 2 college-age students, both one male, secondarily female, in conjunction with Chairperson Lori Elmore. She's not making the financial commitment. I will make the financial commitment personally to do a scholarship to a male and a female, and it will be a speech scholarship where they will be able to recite 2 pages from Martin Luther King's speech, The Other America. The scholarship will, the persons who are receiving that scholarship will receive a scholarship of $250 per student. I want to say $250 because my wife is saying she wants to match it for another $250, so it could go up to $500, and this is now on tape, so she's going to have to match it. Right, so it really could jump up to $500 per student, and I am in contact with the schools right now, so they're trying to find the eligible student, but I'm really excited about that. The speech will be done Martin Luther King Day 2020, when we are currently working on the program for that, but that will be the flagship part of that program, and I'm really, really, really excited about that. So just, I hope you all would attend January the 20th, just to at least see the scholarship recipients, but it will be the first annual Whitehall City Attorney Scholarship. I intend on doing it as long as I'm in this seat.
That's great. That is awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Is that gonna be at the high school or here?
It's going to be here in City
Okay,
Hall.
and you know the time by chance?
We don't know yet. We're working on the program, but it'll be
Okay.
on Martin Luther King Day.
Gotcha.
All right, thank you, sir. Next up, we have our city auditor, Mr. Dan Miller.
Well, I have nothing, no official report. I have nothing.
Okay. We also have with us this evening our Director of Public Safety, Mr. Van Gregg.
Mr. President, I don't have an official report tonight.
All righty, thank you, sir. We also have our Treasurer, Mr. Steve Quinzel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too have no official report tonight. However, if you missed the dispatch this morning, Heartland Bank, headquartered here in Whitehall, Ohio, has acquired a community banking concern based out of Kentucky, and the new banks will also bear the Heartland name, and we will then have Heartland banks in Kentucky and Cincinnati area.
Wonderful.
All right.
41 million, wasn't it? 41.4 million, I think I read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right, we have received the following official reports in the council office since our last meeting. We've received the mayor's report to council for September and October 2019. We've received the treasurer's investment report for October 2019, the treasurer's activity by fund report for October 2019, along with the treasurer's fund reconciliation report for October 2019. Under communications, petitions, and claims, we have the minutes of the November 7, 2019 Planning Commission meeting and the agenda for the December 5th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. That's all we have under communications, petitions, and claims.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion, members of council, for Mr. Michael Atkins, who's in the audience here, to appoint Mike Atkins to the Parks and Recreation Commission for a new 3-year term, please.
Second?
I have a motion by Mr. Cantor and a second by Ms. Coniston to appoint Mike Atkins to the Parks and Recreation Commission for the 3-year term. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Heck.
All right. The motion has passed.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm off to my next function.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right.
All right.
Uh-huh.
You want to get off, right?
No. I'm not wearing out.
Get on yours on.
Right.
All right, at this time, I'd like Ms. Aug to call the roll on whether each member of council was given a copy of each item of legislation listed on the agenda prior to the meeting, and including any add-on legislation.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
All right, we will begin our ordinances and resolutions for this evening. First up, we have our third readings. We have Ordinance 124, 2019, amending Section 184.03 of the Codified Ordinances titled Definitions and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 124, 2019, and move for its adoption.
Second?
I have a motion by Mr. Rodriguez and a second by Ms. Coniston for introduction and adoption of ordinance 124, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Ordinance 124, 2019 has been adopted. It's the only item we have under third reading. Under second reading, we start with Ordinance 126, 2019, making an appropriation for current general fund expenses street expenses, and state highway materials, expenses during the period from January 1, 2020 to December 31, 2020, in the total sum of $36,930,373 and declaring an emergency. That ordinance is being read by title only. Our next ordinance is 131, 2019. It's making an appropriation for certain special revenue, internal service, and fiduciary accounts for the calendar year 2020 in the total sum of $13,587,000, wait, shoot. For some reason, I can't get this one out. $13,872,000, or 800, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I can't read this one here. All right, it's 13,500,000.
That's because it's really.
572,000.
13
Okay,
million,
I missed that. I'm not seeing the 8 there. Okay, that's what it is. All right. Let me start this again. Making an appropriation for certain fiduciary revenue, internal service, and fiduciary accounts for the calendar year 2020 in the total sum of $13,872,103.16 and declaring an emergency. Holy mackerel.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 131, 2019, hopefully amended as you read it.
Well, I certainly don't want to change it now.
Second.
Well, I have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Mr. Rodriguez to amend ordinance 131, 2019 to, as read. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Ordinance 131, 2019 has been amended. Next, we have ordinance 132, 2019. It's amending 131.161, titled Capital Improvements and Project Fund and declaring an emergency. That ordinance is being read by title only. Next up, we have ordinance 133, 2019, amending 135.18B, title Fleet Reserve and Maintenance Fund and declaring an emergency. Next, we have ordinance 134, 2019, amending 135.24B of the codified ordinances of the city of Whitehall, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. That is being read by title only. Our next ordinance is 135, 2019. It's amending 135.22 self-funded insurance trust fund and declaring an emergency. That ordinance is being read by title only. It is followed by ordinance 137, 2019, approving and making a supplemental appropriation of $100,000 from unappropriated monies in the general fund to the self-funded health insurance expense account and declaring an emergency. That ordinance is being read by title only. Next, we have Resolution 52, 2019, approving the recommendations of the City of Whitehall Tax Incentive Revenue Council for tax year 2018. I know it sounds funny, but that's being read by title only.
That's right.
Yeah, I know. We talked about it last week. It's strange. All right, next up we have Resolution 53, 2019. It's authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with World Play LLC and its affiliates, Delaware Limited Liability and Government Payment Service Incorporated, to accept payments on the city's behalf using credit cards and debit cards and declaring an emergency. That resolution is being read by title only. It's the last item of legislation we have under second reading. We'll move on to our items under first readings, and we begin with ordinance 140, 2019, amending 161.38 of the codified ordinances of the City of Whitehall, Ohio, titled Salary Schedule, and declaring an emergency. That ordinance is being read by title only. We are now at ordinance 141, 2019. It's approving and making a fund transfer of $1,757,219 from unappropriated monies in the general fund to the debt service fund, approving and making a supplemental appropriation of $1,750,000 from the debt service fund to the debt service account, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 141, 2019, move for suspension of rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Elmore for introduction and suspension of all rules on ordinance 141, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 141, 2019.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bailey, second by Ms. Elmore for adoption of ordinance 141, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
Ordinance 141, 2019 has been adopted. Our next ordinance is 142, 2019. It's approving and making a fund transfer of $9,658,887.20 from unappropriated monies in the general fund to the debt service fund, approving and making a supplemental appropriation of $9,620,000 from the debt service fund to the debt service account, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 142, 2019, move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Elmore for introduction and suspension of all rules on ordinance 142, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 142, 2019.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bailey, second by Ms. Elmore for adoption of ordinance 142, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
Ordinance 142, 2019 has been adopted. Our next ordinance is 143, 2019. It's authorizing and approving the following appropriation transfers in the amount of $65,000 to the police salaries account, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 143, 2019, move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Coniston for introduction and suspension of all rules on ordinance 143, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 143, 2019.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bailey and second by Ms. Coniston for adoption of ordinance 143, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
Ordinance 143, 2019 has been adopted. Next, we have ordinance 144, 2019. It's authorizing and approving a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $13,550 from unappropriated monies in the Clerk of Court Computerization Fund to the Clerk of Court IT Salary Expense Account, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 144, 2019, move for a suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Coniston for introduction and suspension of all rules on ordinance 144, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 144, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bailey, second by Ms. Coniston for adoption of ordinance 144, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Ordinance 144, 2019 has been adopted. Next up, we have ordinance 145, 2019, authorizing and approving a supplemental appropriation from unappropriated monies in the General Fund 101 in the amount of $225,000 to the Police and Fire Pension Expense Account and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 145, 2019. Move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Coniston for introduction and suspension of all rules on ordinance 145, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 145, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion by motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Coniston for adoption of ordinance 145, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Ordinance 145, 2019 has been adopted. Next up, we have ordinance 146, 2019. It's unappropriating $1,229,000 from various accounts within the Energy Upgrades Fund and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 146, 2019. Move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Heck for introduction and suspension of all rules on ordinance 146, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 146, 2019.
Move to adopt.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Heck for adoption of ordinance 146, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor,
No.
Heck.
Yes.
Ordinance 146, 2019 has been adopted. Next, we have ordinance 147, 2019. It's reclassifying a portion of a fund advance as a fund transfer and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 147, 2019. Move for suspension of all rules.
Second?
I have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Mr. Cantor for introduction and suspension of all rules on ordinance 147, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 147, 2019.
Move to adopt.
Second?
I have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Mr. Cantor for adoption of ordinance 147, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Ordinance 147, 2019 has been adopted. Next up, we have ordinance 148, 2019, amending 161.39 titled compensation for casual and personal service contract employees in the Parks and Recreation Department and declaring an emergency. That ordinance is being read by title only. Next, we have ordinance 149, 2019, amending 161.37F titled Table of Authorized Personnel and declaring an emergency. That ordinance is being read by title only. Next, we have ordinance 150, 2019, approving and making a supplemental appropriation of $15,000 from previously unappropriated monies in the general fund to the property acquisition expense account and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 150, 2019, move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Mr. Morrison for introduction and suspension of all rules of ordinance 150, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 150, 2019.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bailey, second by Mr. Morrison for adoption of ordinance 150, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Ordinance 150, 2019 has been adopted. Next, we have ordinance 151, 2019, making and approving a supplemental appropriation of $79,620 from the Temporary Assistance to Needy Families Fund to the Temporary Assistance Needy Families Fund account and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 151, 2019, move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Elmore for introduction and suspension of all rules on ordinance 151, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 151, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bailey, second by Ms. Elmore for adoption of ordinance 151, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Ordinance 151, 2019 has been adopted. Next, we have ordinance 152, 2019, making a supplemental appropriation of $150,000 from unappropriated monies in the Ymca Fund to the Poth Road Incentive Account, making a fund transfer in the amount of $150,000 from the Poth Road Incentive Account to the Economic Development Incentives Planning Fund, making a supplemental appropriation of $150,000 from the Economic Development Incentives Fund to the Economic Development Incentives Account, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 152, 2019, move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Mr. Morrison for introduction and suspension of all rules on ordinance 152, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 152, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bailey, second by Mr. Morrison for adoption of ordinance 152, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Ordinance 152, 2019 has been adopted. Next, we have ordinance 123, 2019. It's approving and making a supplemental appropriation of $15,000 from previously unappropriated monies in the Law Enforcement Trust Fund to the Law Enforcement Trust Set-Aside Forfeiture Expense Account and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 153, 2019, move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Coniston for introduction and suspension of all rules on ordinance 153, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 153, 2019.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bailey, second by Ms. Coniston for adoption of ordinance 153, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Ordinance 153, 2019 has been adopted. Next, we have ordinance 154, 2019. It's levying an additional $5 vehicle registration permissive tax as authorized by Ohio Revised Code, section 4504.173.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 154, 2019, and move for the suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Heck and a second by Mr. Bailey for introduction and suspension of all rules on ordinance 154, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 154, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Heck and a second by Mr. Bailey for adoption of ordinance 154, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Ordinance 154, 2019 has been adopted. Next up, we have Resolution 54, 2019, authorizing the mayor to apply for and accept an Ohio Department of Public Safety grant and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce Resolution 54, 2019, and move for the suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Coniston and a second by Mr. Cantor for introduction and suspension of all rules on Resolution 54, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on Resolution 54, 2019.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Coniston, second by Mr. Cantor for adoption of Resolution 54, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Resolution 54, 2019 has been adopted. Next, we have Resolution 55, 2019, resolving to approve then and now certificates and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce Resolution 55, 2019, move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Heck for introduction and suspension of all rules on Resolution 55, 2019. Questions or comments? Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on Resolution 55, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to adopt.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Heck for adoption of Resolution 55, 2019. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Resolution 55, 2019 has been adopted. Next, we have Resolution 56, 2019, authorizing the mayor to accept title to parcel number 090-007-555-00 and 090-008-39900 located within the city of Whitehall, and pay all fees associated with the transfer of properties and declaring an emergency. Being read by title only. It's the last item of legislation we have on the agenda this evening. That brings us to our second opportunity for poll public. Who would like to come forward at this time? No one? All right. Well, we'll move on to Community Day Board. What's that?
That's a lot tonight.
Was a lot.
What do we have for Community Day Board?
Well, the mayor already went over Winter
Everything?
Wonderland Friday night.
That's right, Friday night.
And I think we have like something called
Isn't there
Breakfast with Santa sometime. I think
There
that's on the
is,
14th.
you know,
Okay, see.
but Santa has to go back to the North Pole and get things ready for breakfast with Santa.
That's right.
on December 14th.
There you go.
9 o'clock, it'll go on to 11:30. Come hungry, we'll have pancakes and sausage and drinks and lots of fun.
Hopefully coffee.
We will have coffee.
Who else has something for Community Day Board? All right, we'll move on to poll council. We'll begin with Mr. Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank everyone for watching and those who showed up, and everybody have a good week.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hello, everybody. Thanks for watching. Tom, good to see you again. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Rodriguez.
We're going to be stopping that after the first of the year. Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, everyone, for Tom coming. And wanted to thank or congratulate Mike Adkins on his reappointment. And Mike, thank you for the Martin Luther King scholarships. That's pretty cool. Over here at Broad and Hamilton, there's the annual Christmas lights over the Shell station. Jim and Vicki do a really nice job on that every year. They put a lot into that, a lot of time and effort and expense into that. So.
You mean Tim?
Did I say Tom?
No, Tim does the work, so.
Well, okay, yeah.
Because you included Vicky.
But we know who's the boss.
I understand.
All right.
Okay.
Vicki tells them where to play.
She does a great job. Don't you, Vicky? Thank you.
So anyway, just a reminder that we should be shopping Whitehall, shopping locally whenever we can. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Elmore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for everyone that's viewed today. We have a lot of business to take care of. I just want to say I'm looking forward to working with you again on the Black History Month of January, Martin Luther King. And it's going to be bigger and better than it was last year. It was great. Hope for everybody to come out and be safe this holiday season. Be careful, women, going to your cars. And just want to say, just have a good evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Coniston.
I would just like to thank everybody for viewing and Tom for coming. We'll see you up here soon. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving.
All right, Mr. Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, everybody, for watching. First off, I'd like to thank Councilperson Heck for all the time that you've devoted over the opening of the YMCA. I know you were over there all last week giving tours, and you've been over there this week, so I want to thank you so much. Secondly, what Councilperson Elmore said, when you go shopping, look around at your environments, be safe, look out for the other person, just watch their back. Also, I would like to give a little special kudo to Councilperson Elmore and our city attorney, Mr. Bivens. Many, many weeks ago, we sat in the back here, and they were talking about this guy, what a great job he's going to do, and I'm just sitting back there thinking, how in the world can you compliment somebody who's did nothing except win 3 games when the head coach of Ohio State was suspended? This gentleman today was named Coach of the Year in the Big Ten for the first time in 40 years. And you did. Do you remember that conversation that we had? So we had a little bit further conversation on that, but I won't go into that. So start of the holiday season. Everybody have fun. I know I was exhausted from shopping yesterday at that computer for the kids. I girls, yes, absolutely. That's all I have, Mr. President.
All right, Ms. Heck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, everybody, for doing at home. Thank you, Tom, for coming. I hope to see many of you on Friday at the Winter Wonderland, and that's all I have.
All righty. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming and everyone for watching us this evening, and for those of you who are going to watch us tomorrow and the next day, because not everybody watches it on the same day that we do it. So we're viewed many times during the week and beyond. We had no other official business before us this evening, so I think a motion of adjournment would certainly be in order.
Second.
Mr. President. Go ahead. Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Bailey, or Mr. Tanner, and a second by Mr. Rodriguez for adjournment. Ms. Aug, please call the roll.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Heck?
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. Hope to see you all at our next meeting.
I'd like to invite you to join me on.
Y'all come back.
That guy.